Shams has finally reported what we all pretty much suspected, which is that the Phoenix Suns are all but certainly going to trade Kevin Durant in the offseason.
The Suns and Durant would work together on any potential trade to a contender unless there's a significant run here into the playoffs.
I've already talked extensively about the situation in Phoenix and how dire it is and how trading Durant and blowing this whole thing up is pretty much the only thing that can be done at this point. I don't really want to dwell on that. It's been talked about. Instead, let's focus on what team Kevin Durant would be best suited to join. We need to pair both what his best role at this stage in his career would be with what his potential motivations may be in order to find the perfect destination. Hello everybody, welcome to Rusty Bucket. Subscribe to the channel and drop a like on this video, and check us out over on Spotify and podcast and music and sound. So first things first, we need to talk about where Kevin Durant ranks in the NBA. Not so much literally the number, but just how it affects what teams should be expecting when they trade for him, as well as how his play style would be best utilized. At the age of 36, with limited burst and rim pressure, though there has been some improvements for Kevin Durant's rim frequency, they're still very, very low for your superstar player who's averaging 26 points per game. With that limited rim pressure, as well as some limited playmaking ability, he's good at it, but it's definitely not, he should not be your primary playmaker. As a result of those factors, I think it is quite obvious that he is best served as a second option at this point in his career. At least second option in terms of the hierarchy of responsibility for shot creation. He could still technically lead the team in shots, but he can't be the one primarily dictating the flow of the offense. For the most part, he should be play finishing, walking into relatively easy buckets and just taking advantage of his all-time great jump shot. Limit his job to literally nothing besides for bucket getting and weak side help defense. I think that is the best way to maximize him. To this point, I really feel like Durant has been overextended. He also really needs a super strong playmaker. I think Durant has been at his best and most effective within any system that features high-level playmaking, whether that be Russ in OKC, the Golden State Warriors offense just as a whole between Draymond and Steph's playmaking, and James Harden in Brooklyn. One of Durant's biggest issues right now is that he is overbilled and overextended. He's just not built for that first option life anymore. He does not have the all-around impact that he used to. He does not have the rim pressure that he used to, the reliability of the consistency of those shots around the rim and the free throws. Just so much of his shot diet is jump shot heavy that ideally your franchise player is somebody who gets to the bucket, is a player who can consistently get themselves really easy looks. He still gets his numbers. He will always still get his numbers, but they will ring hollow if they come to him in the manner that they have in Phoenix and in part in Brooklyn. To me, Durant was at his best in the Golden State Warriors system because he scored insanely effectively. His attack would start within one of Golden State's sets, and then sometimes it would just end as intended. Simply catch and shoot the ball, cut to the rim, catch an alley-oop, whatever the fuck the play was. But if the play broke down, he could then freestyle with some Kevin Durant shit. The fact that Kevin Durant shit was the backup plan to that offense is what made them so damn ridiculous. Rather than it being the foundation that they live on and constantly hit over and over and over again, instead, they allow Kevin Durant's offense and one-on-one scoring to be a very large, but ultimately still the cherry on top. 2 of Durant's 5 highest true shooting seasons in his career were with the Golden State Warriors. So secondary scoring, low playmaking expectation, and minimal defensive expectation. The fact that Durant is basically the best defender on the Phoenix Suns is a complete joke. There is no context in which Kevin Durant should be your best defender pretty much ever, but especially in 2025. Don't get me wrong, he's been doing a damn good job. I respect the hell out of it. He's done that job as well as he could. But it shouldn't be his job. That's just simply not what his responsibilities should be. After that, we need to talk about trade value. We have to factor in his age and his price tag. Durant's making over $50 million a year. He is not going to be netting the treasure trove of assets similar to the ones that the Phoenix Suns gave up in order to get him in the first place. You're not going to get an equal return for what you gave up by any means. If I had to wager, I would think he gets you obviously some matching salary and then one or two really nice young players, not some bona fide future star necessarily, maybe if that's just where the deal is being led with, but just young guys with serious upside and who have displayed a level of competence already. Then two to four first round picks on top of that, kind of depending on how high quality those firsts are. Like if you have a really good young player and then one good first round pick and matching salary, that could honestly get the deal done. If it's just truly a perfect combination, it doesn't necessarily have to be a 4, 5, 6 first round pick deal. I don't even think that he would necessarily net that unless it is a team that, just for example, would compensate for the lack of actual talent being moved in the deal by instead throwing 7 first-round picks out for the fuck of it because you have $1 million. I don't know what team I could be referring to. We'll get to that later. There are a few teams rumored to be interested in Durant so far: the Golden State Warriors, the Dallas Mavericks, Houston Rockets, Miami Heat, Minnesota Timberwolves, and Memphis Grizzlies. Many of these teams were in conversations to make a deal for him at the deadline, but that obviously fell through. The first team that I want to talk about is, of course, the one in the thumbnail, the OKC Thunder. I want this to happen so fucking bad. It's the coolest thing that could plausibly happen. I'm obviously known as a Kevin Durant hater. I made a whole fucking long form video with 500,000 views called the Kevin Durant Hater Manifesto. Obviously, I be hating on Kevin Durant, but truly, where almost all of my animosity, my source of criticism comes from, is entirely in that I feel like his career story has been severely disappointing based on the decisions that he himself has made. His OKC tenure ending the way it did, going to Golden State, the way that he has failed to build a team and win a championship with it since. It's been pretty embarrassing how much he has fallen on his face since the Warriors tenure. And then on top of that, even though I'm not mad about the Warriors thing, I also do not think that it's very good for his legacy by any means. I really didn't feel like those championships mean that much other than, yeah, you can't say the guy didn't win a ring, but you also can't say the guy won a ring as the clear-cut best player on the team. And, I mean, he wouldn't be doing that, just for the record, if he did that with OKC now. But there is a degree of reconciliation and a bit of a, tying the story together with a bow at the very end. I love the best thing to me about the NBA is the theater of it combined with the fact that it's real. Love movies, love TV, love drama, all of that. But you can't beat the reality of NBA drama and NBA stories and the power of sports. And if you combine Kevin Durant's history with OKC, but then you bring him there and then he brings them a title as the second best player on that team, it would be so fucking awesome. There's been much talks as to if J-Dub would be in this hypothetical deal, and honestly, I think that depends entirely on what Sam Presti wants. The task of paying J-Dub after adding Durant to the payroll would be a pretty daunting one, so perhaps you could treat this like cutting off that possibility might just be the move. On the other hand, it could be like a repeat of the worst trade during the Durant era in exchange for Durant. So I think OKC probably holds on to him. You don't want Dub to go to another team and then turn into a perennial all-star, all-NBA, borderline MVP level player, and then you've got 2 years of Kevin Durant taking up a huge chunk of your salary out of it. I think you try and keep J-Dub there and you just end up biting the bullet on a pretty heavy tax bill. I'm not sure that Durant would want this to happen, but if the fucking Thunder do and they're not taking the approach of caring all that much about what Durant wants, they could easily get him. They can get whatever player in the league they want, more or less, besides for the dudes who are truly untouchable, which apparently that term means mostly nothing anyways. I also think you could, with the level of capital that OKC has, you could reroute like 3 first-round picks to another team that has Phoenix's pick. I believe it's Houston that has them, or is it the Nets? Either way, I think it's the Nets, right? Yeah, it's the Nets that have Phoenix's pick. Could do a reroute where the Nets give Phoenix back their own first. They get multiple firsts from OKC. Either way, I do think it would be great. I just don't know what Durant would want here, especially if OKC does manage to win the championship this year. Like, he already gets called a front runner a lot, joining the defending champions after years of stumbling yet again. Going to the very franchise that he betrayed and failed to bring a title to. It would be pretty rough. So I think the only way we're going to see this happen is if the Thunder lose the championship this year, which gives me a weird perspective going into the playoffs because I really, really want Kevin Durant to go there, but I also want the Thunder to win the title because it would mean that I was right, and that's the most important thing of all time. But yeah, seeing him in that arena again, seeing him wear number 35 again, seeing him thrive as a second option alongside SGA. They would also have a really good, just core starting 5. SGA, Dub, Dort, Durant, and Chet is a crazy 5-man lineup. I would love for Isaiah Hartenstein to also be there, but unfortunately, in order to trade for Durant, you have to include him in that deal. But like the idea of Durant at the 3, Chet at the 4, and Hart at the 5 is fucking awesome. It's just not really doable. I think there's maybe a way that you could scrape together a bunch of other contracts and make it happen, but you'd really be forcing the issue, and then all of your money that's not invested in your core 4 players would be invested in Isaiah Hartenstein, so that's probably for the best. That's a fantasy scenario to the fullest extent. I understand if OKC wouldn't want to invest in such an expensive and old player with their timeline and given the key younger players that may have to be included in the deal. But I don't know, man. I just think it would be so sick, and that's ultimately what I'm looking for. I want the coolest thing to happen, so I'm always going to lead with that. I mean, fuck it. Bring Russ in as a spark plug off of the bench. Merge the old OKC generation in with the new, and they can bring OKC a title together. Tell me that you aren't sold on that story. Tell me that's not a great fucking story. I would be so endearing. It'd be one of the most heartfelt championships in NBA history. God, I love it. But okay, off of my soapbox, let's address the other teams that could theoretically break my heart here. For Houston, honestly, I really don't think they should do it. This is a tie-in that I just have not really understand. They're just so young. Like, ride it out. Let your players develop. You have a core here that you can be competing for playoff contention for the next 5-6 years. So either keep this team together, or if you're going to trade for a star player, trade for a star player who can somewhat give you, like, a long-term timeline, not 2 to 3 years. On top of that, this isn't a second option high-level playmaker situation. So I also hate the fit. Sengun's a good playmaker, but he's not your first option next to Kevin Durant. No one on this team is a fucking first option next to Kevin Durant. No one can hold a candle to what Durant can do as a first option offensively on this team. So Durant would have to be the first option. He would have to take a big brunt of the playmaking because he would be the lead ball handler damn near half of the time. Like, it's just, I just don't like what it would mean for Durant. I don't like what it would mean for Houston. I just, across the board, hate this fit. I straight up don't think that they should do it. I understand why they want to jump the gun and they go, this is a pretty good core. Let's get a star player in here around it and see how that goes. But frankly, dude, you should just have some patience. Have some patience. It'll work out for you better than this. I think they'd be jumping the gun. Miami is interesting because while he would be a number 1 option, which I am against, he wouldn't be so far and away above Tyler Hero or Bam Adebayo in that offensive hierarchy. And if there was any team that I think could make Durant as a number 1 option still work, it's the Miami Heat because they have the Miami Heat black magic. You combine that with Durant's ability to elevate in the playoffs, and some wild shit could truly go down. With Ware breaking out, Bam playing the 4, the idea of going supersized with a lineup of like Tyler Hero at point, Jovic or Durant at the 2 if they can defend that matchup, Durant at the 3, and then you have just length and shooting everywhere. Hero, Jovic, Durant, and Ware are all good three-point shooters. Defensively, you're huge. You're absorbing so much space. Bam is liberated to be free-flowing, while Ware is able to be primarily the rim protector. You also have Kevin Durant as a weak side rim protector. Jovic is like 6'9". Like, if they could manage to make that lineup go together, if it would work, oh my God, I think the theory of that lineup is very much there. I love the idea of this, but I also think Miami just got out of this whole $50 million a year for an injury-prone 36-year-old thing. So I think I'd avoid this. Obviously, KD doesn't come with the baggage that Jimmy does, but he doesn't come without baggage. And I just think maybe Miami, again, I'm feeling the same way I am about Houston. Like, let's just ride this out for a little bit. Let's see what this team looks like before we determine that this is what we're doing here. All right. Ironically, a return to Golden State. If Durant can't be your second option, or at the very least, like, not clearly your first, I just don't want to see your team trade for him. That's really how I feel about it. Ironically, a return to Golden State would be more or less a three-way split with him, Curry, and Butler. I would wager during the regular season that Steph and Durant shoot considerably more than Jimmy Butler, but in a postseason setting, it probably a pretty well-distributed mix there. Because the Dubs retained most of, actually all of their young talent in the Jimmy Butler deal, they could theoretically flip that young talent for yet another star player. The big bitch of it is I think you have to include Draymond Green in this deal in order for it to happen, which would definitely be layered in irony. At the same time, I feel like Durant would be more interested in playing in Golden State with Durant or with Draymond not there because of their beef. But I come back to the same point here that I do with OKC if they do win the title. If legacy is at the top of his mind, I don't really feel like Durant would want to be a dub again. And I can't blame him for that either. Like, another ring where his co-star, Steph, is like, he's co-starring on that ring, that's just really not going to change anything about his reputation. If anything, I feel like people would pile on the jokes even more. Yeah, his resume will say 3 titles, but the story of his career is didn't work in OKC, and then he fled to join Stephen Curry at his peak. And then he left Stephen Curry, fell on his face, stepped on a bunch of rakes for 5 years, and then he came back to the Warriors and won a ring with him again. Like, it's just going to look like he's Steph's sidekick for his entire career. Even if he got both of those finals MVPs, the "you need Steph" argument will follow him for his entire career. It would be akin to, Kobe Bryant, the criticism against him earlier in his career being, you can't win one without Shaq. Then imagine if Kobe left LA and then came back to LA to join Shaq and win a 3rd ring with him. Like, people would be like, well, that's embarrassing, man. You just proved that narrative perfectly. Like, even if it's facetious and simple-minded to treat it like it's just blanket statement that as I laid it out, it's really not that simple. It's not that black and white, but that doesn't mean that people won't act like it is. So I don't think that one's going to happen. Minnesota would be cool. You can flip the Randall contract, throw in Rob Dillingham, some future first-round picks. If you do have them to trade after the Rudy deal, you might actually not, which would make this complicated. I think he'd be a great second option next to Ant, who, Ant's not as high quality of a playmaker as I would like next to Durant, but it's good enough to get the job done. Not the best outcome for him, but definitely far from the worst. That one's on the table. Not my favorite, but it's okay. Memphis, I feel like, would be asking him to be a clear-cut number one option, but then again, at the same time, they have been getting increasingly egalitarian in their approach over there this year. Like, I kind of feel like the splitting of the shots, the field goal attempts, would more or less just be a four-way cross between Ja, Bane, Durant, and Jaren, which that would be a pretty fucking effective plan of attack because all of those guys are very capable scorers. And if you just kind of take the '08 Celtics approach of everybody gets the same amount of shots, but like that's across the board. There will be games where Ray Allen's hot, so we feed Ray Allen. There will be games where Paul Pierce is hot, so we feed Paul Pierce. If you put Durant in that system and then just treated like whoever's got the hot hand is the guy who leads today, I think that would be pretty cool. It's possible that you can't do this deal without throwing Desmond Bane into it, and you might have to do that as well due to just limited draft capital access because they've kind of flubbed a couple of first-round picks for Marcus Smart, and that was just stupid, man. I don't hate this one, but I don't love it. If we really truly just got the exact approach I mentioned across those four, they were able to keep Bane, you could talk me into that actually being pretty fucking cool. Dallas is the last big one. This is probably the most rumored one across the board. This reads as a similar situation, albeit an improved one from that of the Phoenix Suns. But at the end of the day, still Durant just walking into a very similar situation to the one that he is already in. Another guard paired next to him who is not a high-level playmaker or big-time rim frequency. Actually, better to say just foul drawer. Kyrie gets to the rim plenty. He just doesn't always take advantage of it in the way that a lot of other star guards will. And then you have another $50 million a year injury-prone third option. Now, obviously, that is a little reductive because AD is much, 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 much better than Bradley Beal. Obviously. Not even just from literally just if we're accumulating their basketball ability into a jar, which jar is filled higher, like obviously AD in that category, but also just fitting into the context of the fit on the team. AD is so much better of an option than Bradley Beal. But how available will he be? How many times will we see Durant, Kyrie after an ACL tear, by the way, I wrote this before that even happened, and AD? How often are those three going to be healthy at the same time, on the court at the same time? This will be the same issue as the Phoenix Suns, the same issue as the Brooklyn Nets. This is something I hadn't even included in my criteria, but frankly, if you're trading for Kevin Durant, don't have a bunch of injury-prone boomers surrounding him because guess what? You guys are never going to get healthy. It will never work. I'm quite confident that a trio of Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis, fuck yeah, that would be good. Fuck yeah, that would work. But I just have so much doubt that it would ever happen. The balance in scoring and defense is perfect. The three guys on the floor, that's three guys who could drop 30 on any given night. Fuck, maybe you could get 30 from all of them one day, like in a same game, some truly wild shit. Who is the first through third option can kind of depend on the day, which is exactly the situation that I'm asking for. It could work on paper. Not as well as is the most idealistic for maximizing an aging Durant, but it would still come together to being a pretty fucking excellent basketball team. The problem then comes, though, again with the injury stuff, but I also don't know how easy it would be to fill out the rest of this roster. In order to make this deal, you have to include Max Christie, just as the young player piece to entice them. You have to include a bunch of your future draft capital, and then you probably have to include at least two of, even maybe all three, Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington, and Klay Thompson. Then you're left with Durant, Kyrie, AD, making a combined over $130, $140 million. Then you have Caleb Martin, Derek Lively, and fucking Dante Exum. That's enough to round out a starting lineup, and that's fucking it. You can This is starting to smell like the Phoenix Suns to me, is it not? Are we gonna bullshit ourselves into thinking that Yuta Watanabe could be a real rotation player for this team? Are we doing this exact same fucking cycle again? I want KD to OKC for fan fiction reasons. I love a good sports story, but it's honestly also easily the best fit of any of the teams that I can imagine in this bidding war. They have high-level playmaking. They can easily make sure he's the second option. Some nights he can be the third and fourth option. There's so many good defenders around him that he's nowhere near expected to be the best defender on the team, and he would fit right into their system. He would kind of just fill in all the gaps that they're lacking. Their three-point shooting can be kind of lacking. If he could increase his volume, that would be huge. Like, it would just work so well. Any NBA team, and this is a PSA, of course, all the NBA teams, all the owners, all the GMs, they watch this channel. Any team that trades for Durant in the hopes that he will be the option that leads them to a title, the number one option that leads them to a title, they're fooling themselves. He is not the player that he was, and he's never going to be again, no matter what you put around him. And that is so okay. This is not me hating. Dude's old as hell. He tore his damn Achilles when he was like 30-something. Let the man rest. Stop this elder abuse. Fucking 37 minutes a game is what Durant's averaging this year. He has the 18th highest usage rate in the NBA as the NBA's 15th oldest player. And when you look at the list of the NBA's 14 players who are older than Kevin Durant, that list goes LeBron, Steph, and a bunch of washed fucking bums. Garbage, a bunch of old ass dudes who are still here because people like them, like Jeff Green or DeAndre Jordan. He is the third oldest actually good NBA player, and he has the 18th highest usage rate in the entire NBA. It's unacceptable. It just is. Steph and LeBron don't even have the usage rate of Kevin Durant. And this guy is so old. He's allowed to be old. He's allowed to have a break. Seriously, OKC and Kevin Durant, I know this breakup was hard, but you've both grown so much as people. You're so much more emotionally mature. You know what you want. You know what you need. You maybe weren't ready for each other at that time, all that long ago. Your egos clashed. You were it was a new relationship. You weren't really ready yet, but now you guys are a match made in heaven. Why let the past get in the way of what could be so good in the future? Truly, it would be so fucking fire. All right, I've said my piece. That's it. Goodbye.